Soldier X, Chapter 1, In Dead Men's Clothes, March 21st, 1944. I can still smell the stench of the troop train. I can still feel myself sway with the motion of it as it pounded eastward from Germany toward the battlefields of Russia. The train was old, a relic that had been pressed into service because of the war. Once elegant and used perhaps for wealthy people going on vacation, time had rendered it into something ornately decrepit. Filthy gold tassels hung from faded green velvet curtains. The windows were oval in shape, the glass yellowed by age, stuffing sprouted from seats upholstered in cracking, scaly-looking leather. And at the back of the car, behind a curtained-off alcove, was a toilet that emptied directly onto the tracks. Like myself, most of those on the train were young boys, teenagers. Other than being soldiers in the German army, we had little in common. Fear, uncertainty, and homesickness, these were the only real bonds that united us. We were also alike in that we wore dead men's clothes. By truck and rail, the boots and gray-green uniforms of those killed in battle had been returned to Germany for washing and mending. The sleeves of my jacket had jagged little rips that had been painstakingly sewn, and my shirt collar had dark blood stains all the way around. I found myself wondering about the soldier who had died in the uniform. I wondered who he had been and how he had been killed. Would I, too, die in the uniform? Would it then be passed along to another boy, someone who would then wonder about me, about who I had been? The train carrying us toward the front lines departed early that morning from Nuremberg, Germany. It was March 21st, 1944, my 16th birthday. I told no one. The fact that it was my birthday was of no importance, except to me. "You are nothing. Your Volk are everything." That was the motto of the Hitler Jugend, or HJ, the Hitler Youth. For 5 years the words had been drilled into my head, but not until, sitting there on the troop train, amidst all the others, had I felt them so keenly. I was nothing. I did not matter. According to Adolf Hitler, only my country mattered. "You were born to die for Germany." In 1939, Hitler declared membership in the Jugend mandatory. Parents who objected were imprisoned. Some were hanged. I had no choice. I volunteered for service. Only my father, who had died when I was a baby, was German. My mother and grandparents were Russian. With forged papers, they had emigrated illegally to Germany in the late 1920s. They had learned to speak German fluently and without accent. They had renovated an old house, turning the downstairs into a restaurant, the upstairs into our living quarters. They paid taxes. In every way that really mattered, they had become good German citizens. Nevertheless, should the SS, the Schutzstaffel, discover their background, they would have been deported, perhaps killed. When I joined the Hitler Youth, Austria and Czechoslovakia had already been annexed by Germany to create what Hitler called Lebensraum, living space for the German people. On September 1st, 1939, World War II began in earnest. On that day, we invaded Poland. It fell to us in 16 short days. Denmark, Norway, Belgium, Luxembourg, and France. By 1940, all had fallen. Clearly, no longer was it Lebensraum that Hitler desired. It was all of Europe, and then the world. Early in the war, one of our allies had been Russia, known then as the Soviet Union. The alliance had been an uneasy one. Russia, under the leadership of Stalin, was a communist country. Hitler was anti-communist, and it was well known that he did not trust Stalin any more than Stalin trusted him. On June 22, 1941, we attacked Russia as well. A cloud of confusion settled over our home. My mother and grandparents now lived in terror of being found out, and I felt greatly torn. By birth, I was half Russian, yet Germany was my country, and I wore the uniform of the Hitler Youth, the black pants, brown shirt, and red armband. Before the invasion of Russia, all had seemed so simple. I had enjoyed most of the activities of the Jugend, the sports, the campouts, the physical fitness programs, even the military training, which consisted mostly of target practice. Best of all were the dances and other get-togethers with the girls' branch of the Jugend, the Bund Deutscher Mädchen, League of German Girls. Upon entering the Hitler Youth, we were given a choice of entering different groups within the organization. Those interested in flying, for example, would apply for the Flieger HJ, the Flying Youth. My choice was Die Sprache HJ, in which we studied language. Essentially, we were being prepared to become interrogators or spies. My French and English were passable. However, having been raised in a household where Russian was spoken with as much ease and facility as German, it was in Russian that I excelled. Our teacher, Herr Kraus, was quite good. Still, he sometimes made errors in his pronunciation, inflection, and use of idiomatic expression. I held my tongue. Correcting one's teacher was simply not done. And one kept quiet about the torture and the murder of Jews, foreigners, communists, and everyone else the Nazis considered undesirables. The inevitable consequence of criticizing the government was simply to become just one more undesirable. In my hometown of Wilsburg, a man named Zoll spoke out against the invasion of Russia. His tongue was cut out. Then he and 3 suspected communists were hanged. And then there was the death bus, painted a ghastly green, including its windows. It was in the woods some 20 kilometers or so from Wilsburg. Cripples and mental defectives were taken to the thing and put to death, gassed. And thrown in with them was a Lutheran minister who'd publicly protested the hideous practice. To the horror of all Germans, in 1940, the bombings of our country began. Each year it got worse. By 1943, some of our cities lay in ruins. Food, gasoline, and numerous other goods were in short supply and strictly rationed. Our days of easy conquest were long since over. The British, Americans, and Russians held firm against our forces and then began to attack. Suddenly, we were on the defensive and very afraid. From the battlefields, especially those of Russia, maimed and crippled German soldiers returned with blank, dead stares. Though the newspapers told only of minor setbacks, the tales told by soldiers were very different. They spoke of horror, slaughter, and retreat on the Eastern Front. Minsk, Kiev, Kharkov, Donetsk, Belgorod, and in these places and others, tens of thousands of our men were killed. Whole companies of the Wehrmacht, our army, literally ceased to exist. I was 11 when the war had started. With my friends enthralled, the hair on the back of my neck standing up, I had watched parades as rank after rank of soldiers of the Wehrmacht passed in review, the cheers of onlookers drowned out by the thundering footfalls of their hobnailed jackboots. How powerful they had looked, how fearsome, how invincible. At the time I felt cheated. I dreamed of being one of them, a hero. In my mind I saw myself leading an attack on the enemy position. Single-handedly I would destroy it. But then I would be wounded, most likely in the shoulder. Beautiful nurses would take care of me. Officers would pin medals on me, praise my courage, and thank me for what I had done for my country. In April of 1944, males 16 years of age were declared eligible to fight. I was sick with terror. That I was only 15 did not matter. By the date of your birth, I see, said a very fat little Feldwebel sergeant at the induction center, you will be 16 by the time you reach wherever it is you are to go. He studied my records, and undoubtedly your command of the Russian language will land you in a spot as an interrogator or cause you to be in some similar capacity. He banged the word eligible on my papers with a rubber stamp. He dismissed me, then gestured for the next boy in line to step forward. Thus it was that I found myself on a troop train headed to war. As it screamed across the landscape, I kept thinking there must be some mistake, that this could not really be happening. I wanted to get off. I wanted to go home. The train thundered onward.